The HOA president was on all fours in my side yard when the police arrived. Not kneeling, not crouching. I mean literally stuck to the ground. Her palms were pressed against the concrete. One sandal was hanging halfway off her foot, and she was screaming threats at everyone within earshot while half the neighborhood stood around recording her with their phones. Looking back now, I know that's the image most people would focus on. But honestly, that wasn't the craziest part. The craziest part was that 3 weeks earlier, I had actually felt sorry for her. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 34 years old. I work remotely as a software developer. And about 2 years ago, I bought a small house in a neighborhood called Maple Ridge Estates, about 40 minutes outside Nashville. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a little yard, a front porch, and enough distance from downtown that I could hear birds instead of traffic. At least that was the plan. The day I moved in, everything felt normal. Exhausting, but normal. Boxes everywhere. Furniture half-assembled. The smell of fresh paint mixed with takeout Chinese food. The usual chaos. Around 10:30 that night, I was sitting on a folding chair in my living room because my couch hadn't arrived yet. I had a paper plate balanced on my knee and some terrible action movie playing on the TV. That's when I noticed movement outside the front window. At first, I thought it was a deer. Then I realized it was a person, standing completely still, watching me. I nearly dropped my food. There was a woman outside, middle-aged, short blonde hair, dark sunglasses even though it was nighttime, and a clipboard tucked under one arm. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then she wrote something down, turned around, and walked away. No explanation, no wave, nothing. Just vanished into the darkness. I remember sitting there thinking, did that actually happen? Or am I just exhausted? The next morning, I got my answer. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when somebody knocked on my front door. I opened it and found the same woman standing there. Same sunglasses, same clipboard, same expression that somehow managed to look disappointed and judgmental at the exact same time. "Good morning," she said. I nodded. "Morning." She looked past me into the house. Not subtly, either. Actually leaned sideways to get a better view. Then she started writing. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile people give right before telling you that you've done something wrong. "My name is Patricia Whitmore," she said, "president of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association." Well, that explained the clipboard. Sort of. What didn't explain the clipboard was what came next. She flipped through several pages and cleared her throat. "Your trash bins remained visible from the street after sunset." I blinked. "I moved in yesterday." She ignored me. "The garage door was open for approximately 3 hours." Again, "I moved in yesterday." Another page. "There appears to be an unauthorized bird feeder in the rear section of the property." "Ister de here." "I don't own a bird feeder." She pointed over my shoulder. A cardboard box sitting in the garage. The picture printed on the side happened to show a bird feeder. She had mistaken the photograph on the box for an actual violation. I wish I were joking. When I pointed that out, she wasn't embarrassed. She seemed annoyed that reality had interrupted her investigation. Then she looked directly at me. "Homeownership is a privilege, Mr. Brooks. Maintaining standards is everyone's responsibility." I didn't know whether to laugh or shut the door. So I didn't either. I just stood there holding my coffee while she continued lecturing me about community expectations. Eventually she left, and that should have been the end of it. Just an overly enthusiastic HOA president doing HOA president things. Except it wasn't, because over the next several days, strange little things started happening. The gate to my backyard would be unlatched. Fresh footprints would appear beneath my office window after it rained. More than once, I caught movement outside the glass while I was working. Every time I looked, whoever it was disappeared before I could get outside. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. New house, new neighborhood, stress. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I looked up from my laptop and found Patricia staring directly into my office window from 3 feet away. And in that moment, every excuse I had been making for her suddenly disappeared. Because she wasn't checking the neighborhood. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was watching me. And when I ran outside to confront her, the look she gave me made one thing painfully clear. This wasn't about community standards. This was about power. And Patricia Whitmore had spent years making sure nobody in Maple Ridge ever challenged hers. I stood there in my driveway, watching Patricia walk away. And for the first time since moving into Maple Ridge, I felt something stronger than annoyance. I felt trapped. Not because of the HOA, not because of the fines, because of the confidence she carried. Most bullies bluff. Patricia didn't. She acted like someone who had never been told no. That night, I couldn't focus on work. I kept replaying the conversation in my head while staring out my office window. Every few minutes, I caught myself checking the yard like a paranoid man in a bad thriller movie. The worst part wasn't knowing she was watching. The worst part was knowing she wanted me to know. It was psychological, a constant reminder that she could show up whenever she wanted. The next afternoon, I decided to talk to some neighbors. Surely someone had dealt with her before. The first person I approached was my next-door neighbor, Walter Jennings. Walter was in his 70s, retired military, the kind of guy who looked like he could rebuild a truck engine with a pocket knife and a flashlight. If anybody wasn't afraid of Patricia, it would be him. Or so I thought. I walked over while he was trimming hedges. "Hey, Walter, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What exactly is the deal with Patricia?" The hedge trimmer stopped instantly. Walter looked around, not casually, nervously. His eyes actually moved toward Patricia's house at the end of the block. Then he lowered his voice. "You don't want trouble. I'm already getting trouble." Walter sighed, the deep, exhausted sigh of a man who had given up arguing years ago. "Just keep your head down. That's it. That's my advice." Then he restarted the trimmer and ended the conversation. The exact same thing happened with everyone else. People changed the subject, walked away, pretended not to hear me. One woman actually looked scared, not annoyed, scared. That was when I realized Patricia's real power wasn't the HOA. It was fear. The neighborhood had spent so many years accommodating her that nobody remembered how to push back anymore. For the next week, things escalated. She started leaving violation notices on my door almost daily. Grass height, mailbox alignment, a garden hose left visible from the street. One notice claimed my porch light was aggressively bright. I didn't even know what that meant. Then came a final straw. One Friday morning, I found a printed photograph tucked under my windshield wiper. It was a picture of my backyard, taken from inside my property line. The message written on the back said, "Community standards require vigilance. No signature, no explanation." Just those 4 words. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I made a phone call. His name was Mason Reed. And if there was one person capable of turning a ridiculous situation into an even more ridiculous solution, it was Mason. We've been roommates in college. He worked part-time at a materials testing lab now. Officially, he was an engineer. Unofficially, he was a mad scientist who viewed every inconvenience in life as an opportunity for experimentation. When he arrived the next day, his pickup truck looked like it had survived 3 natural disasters. He climbed out carrying a cooler, 2 toolboxes, and the expression of a man who was already having way too much fun. "You sounded stressed on the phone." "I am stressed." "Excellent. Why is that excellent?" "Because desperate people are more open to innovation." I should have known right then that things were about to get weird. We sat in my garage while I explained everything. The late-night surveillance, the threats, the violations, the photograph, the terrified neighbors. Mason listened without interrupting. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Oh man, what? I have the funniest idea." The moment he said that, I became concerned. The moment he smiled, I became terrified. An hour later, we were standing beside my sidewalkway, the narrow strip of concrete that ran beneath my office and kitchen windows. Mason pointed toward it. "How often does she come through here?" "Almost every day." "Perfect." I rubbed my forehead. Why do I hate that answer? "Because you're a responsible adult." He opened the cooler. Inside were several containers filled with a clear gel. It looked completely harmless, like something you'd find in a science classroom. "What is that?" "A temporary industrial adhesive." "No." "It's safe." "No." "Completely non-toxic." "No." "Legally questionable, but technically permissible." I pointed at him. That sentence is exactly why I said no. Mason laughed. Then he explained the actual plan. No traps, no injuries, no hidden daños. The adhesive would be applied to a section of private walkway clearly located inside my property line. The goal wasn't to hurt anybody. The goal was to create undeniable evidence. Because Patricia's entire defense relied on ambiguity. She always had excuses. She was conducting inspections. She was checking security. She was protecting the neighborhood. But if she wandered deep enough onto private property to get herself stuck while peeking through someone's windows, well, suddenly there wasn't much room left for interpretation. The more I thought about it, the more I hated how much sense it made. So we got to work. Mason cleaned the concrete carefully, applied a thin, invisible layer, then installed a tiny camera inside a decorative birdhouse mounted on my fence. From the street, nobody would notice a thing. When we finished, we went inside and waited. Saturday passed. Nothing. Sunday morning. Nothing. Sunday afternoon. Still nothing. By evening, I started thinking the whole plan was ridiculous. Maybe Patricia had gotten bored. Maybe she finally realized she was crossing lines. Maybe the motion alert appeared on my phone. Mason nearly spilled his drink, jumping off the couch. There! We both leaned toward the screen. A figure had appeared near the side yard, moving slowly, looking around, clipboard in hand. Patricia. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could recognize that posture instantly. The confidence, the entitlement, the certainty that she belonged wherever she decided to stand. She approached the office window, peered inside, made notes, then took another step forward, and another. Neither of us said a word. We just watched. Patricia reached the section of walkway beneath the kitchen window. Her left foot landed, then stopped. She frowned, looked down, pulled upward. Nothing happened. Her sandal remained exactly where it was. For the first time since I'd met her, Patricia Whitmore looked confused. And somehow, that was only the beginning. For the first time since I'd met her, Patricia Whitmore looked confused. And somehow, that was only the beginning. Mason and I watched the camera feed without blinking. Patricia pulled harder. The sandal stayed exactly where it was. She looked around as if reality itself had somehow betrayed her. Then she did what most people would do. She slipped her foot out of the sandal. Bad move. The second her bare foot touched the treated section of concrete, it stuck. Her eyes widened. She tried shifting her weight to her other leg. That foot stuck too. For a moment, she froze completely, like her brain was struggling to process what was happening. Then panic kicked in. Real panic. She jerked backward. Nothing. She twisted sideways. Nothing. Her clipboard dropped from her hand and landed in the grass. What the hell? Even through the camera microphone, we could hear her voice. Mason nearly fell off the couch laughing. Oh my God, she's actually doing it. Stop talking. I'm trying. You are absolutely not trying. Patricia gave one more violent pull. The motion threw her off balance. Suddenly, she was falling forward. Instinct took over. Both hands shot out to catch herself. The moment her palms hit the concrete, it was over. She was stuck. Completely. Both feet. Both hands. Pinned to the ground by her own bad decisions. For 3 full seconds, there was absolute silence. Then she screamed. Not an angry scream. Not a threatening scream. A genuinely shocked scream. The kind that comes from somebody realizing they're no longer in control. Mason wiped tears from his eyes. I haven't been this happy since college. That's honestly concerning. Probably. We gave it another minute before stepping outside. The afternoon sun was bright. The air smelled like freshly cut grass. Birds were chirping. It would have been a beautiful, peaceful day if the neighborhood dictator wasn't glued to my walkway. Patricia immediately saw us. Her face turned bright red. You, I nodded. Afternoon. Get me off this ground right now. I looked around dramatically. Wow, that's weird. What is? You seem to be standing on private property. The look she gave me could have melted steel. I'm calling the police. Already did. That stopped her. Not completely, but enough. What? I called them about 15 minutes ago. Her confidence cracked. Just a little. The first visible fracture. Then I delivered the second one. Oh, and I may have shared a screenshot from the security camera with the neighborhood community page. The color drained from her face. That reaction told me everything. More than police. More than fines. More than lawyers. Patricia was terrified of public embarrassment. Within 10 minutes, people started appearing. First one neighbor, then another, then 6, Then 15. It felt like the entire neighborhood had materialized out of nowhere. Walter was one of the first. He walked over slowly, saw Patricia, stopped, and then smiled. I had never seen Walter smile before. Not once. The man looked like he'd forgotten how. "Well," he said quietly, "that's something you don't see every day." A younger couple started recording. Two teenagers across the street were laughing so hard they had to sit on the curb. An older woman named Diane folded her arms and stared at Patricia. "You remember threatening my daughter over her Christmas decorations?" Patricia didn't answer. Another neighbor stepped forward. "You reported my truck 3 times. Then another. You came into my backyard without permission. Then another, and another, and another." Years of frustration started pouring out. Nobody interrupted. Nobody looked afraid anymore. That was the moment I realized Patricia had already lost. Not because she was stuck, because the spell was broken. Fear only works while people believe they're alone. Suddenly nobody was alone anymore. A police cruiser pulled into the driveway. Then a second one. 2 officers walked over. The older officer took one look at Patricia and paused. He removed his sunglasses, looked at her, looked at me, looked back at her, then sighed. "I have a feeling this is going to require paperwork." "Quite a bit," I said. The younger officer picked up the clipboard from the grass. He started flipping through pages. His expression changed immediately. Sir." The older officer walked over. The notebook contained addresses, schedules, personal notes, observations about residents, times people left for work, times they returned home, vehicle information, family information, page after page after page. The older officer's face darkened. "Ma'am, why exactly do you have all this?" Patricia finally seemed unsure of herself. "It was for community management." "No," the officer replied calmly. "No, it wasn't." The crowd became very quiet. For the first time all afternoon, nobody was laughing, because everyone suddenly realized how extensive it had been, how long she'd been watching, how much information she collected. The officer closed the clipboard. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." Patricia started talking rapidly. Connections, influence, people she knew, city officials, lawyers, the same speech she'd probably used for years. Nobody looked impressed, not even the officers. Mason finally stepped forward holding a small spray bottle. "Mind if I?" The officer shrugged. He sprayed the adhesive. Within seconds it began breaking down. Patricia slowly pulled herself free. Leaves stuck to her hands. Dirt covered her clothes. Her hair was a mess. The woman who had spent years obsessing over appearances looked completely defeated. As the officers escorted her toward the patrol car, nobody cheered. Honestly, that surprised me. Instead, there was something quieter. Relief. Like the neighborhood had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. Over the next month, everything changed. The HOA board launched an internal review. Patricia resigned before it finished. Several policies were rewritten. New oversight was introduced. And eventually she sold her house. The moving truck arrived early one morning. By sunset, she was gone. No would-be, no farewell speech. Nothing. Just gone. These days, Maple Ridge is exactly what I thought it would be when I first moved there. Quiet, peaceful, normal. Sometimes I'll sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and watch Walter work in his garden. Every now and then somebody brings up Patricia, usually when new residents move in. And every single time the conversation ends the same way. Someone asks whether we went too far, whether public humiliation was justified, whether there could have been another way. Honestly, I still don't know. What I do know is this. Power without accountability eventually becomes entitlement. And entitlement always believes the rules apply to everyone else. So here's what I want to ask you. If you had lived in Maple Ridge, what would you have done? Would you have confronted Patricia years earlier? Would you have called the police? Or would you have stayed quiet like everyone else until somebody finally pushed back? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious where you draw the line between protecting a community and controlling one. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, a power-hungry neighbor, or someone who thought they owned the entire neighborhood, share your story below. Trust me, after what happened in Maple Ridge, I know we're probably not the only ones.